So I'm the one who thought burning more wood in Hancock County might be a bad thing. It sounds like a good thing, but lots of things that sound like good things in the past have turned out to be bad things. So I thought this might be one of those, and it might be nice if the college didn't support a bad thing until we knew if it was a good thing. So I want to make a list of all of the bad things that might happen if we burn more wood in Hancock County. So we made a list of all of those things, and then we decided whether they would really be bad or not. So this looked at things like nutrient depletion. So if you haul the wood away, the nutrients that would naturally go back into the soil no longer go back into the soil. So what does that do to the remaining trees? And things like, does harvesting wood open up the landscape for invasive species, or what does it do for wildlife? What does it do for like runoff? Would there be more floods in the springtime if we were cutting more trees? And then what effects would people burning more wood have? Like, would more people hurt their backs? Would you get more rodents in your neighborhood living in wood piles that might carry Lyme disease and all those sorts of things? And it looked like most of those were manageable, except for the impact on air quality. Maybe if you had half of the people in the county burning wood, that would produce a lot of crud depending on how they burned it. Of all the things that are emitted, if you use normal wood stoves, you get a lot of bad crud. So I'm not a big believer in normal wood stoves, but if you use high-tech wood stoves like Russian fireplaces or Finnish fireplaces, or if you use pellet stoves, you get a lot lower levels of emissions of a lot of things. We started looking at what sort of things were emitted when you burn wood in different ways, and tried to estimate what impact 10,000 people, 10,000 households in the county burning wood would have from those emissions. We made these little computer models of stoves giving off stuff, wind blowing, and they simulate levels of different things in the atmosphere from the burning of the wood. And then once you know the levels of things in the atmospheres, people have estimates of how bad different things are for you at different levels. So you can translate the levels in the atmosphere into risks of getting asthma or cancer or pick your favorite disease. We focused on measuring particle levels. So we bought these little particle meters. They just suck air in, and they give you two numbers. One is the number of small particles, and one is the number of larger particles. The larger particles tend to just be dirt kicked up by traffic on the road or something. And the smaller ones tend to be the ones given off from combustion, and they're the more dangerous ones because they go deeper into your lungs. So over last winter, about every week or every 2 weeks, students would drive around Hancock County with these things measuring particle levels. Every maybe 3 miles or so, they'd stop and they'd take a particle reading along with weather data, temperature, wind speed, wind direction, humidity, barometric pressure. And we made maps of how many particles were in what parts of the county, just to see whether there were higher levels in parts of the county where more people burned wood. Particles are sort of low in the eastern part of the county, over there, and they're highest on the Ellsworth to Bangor corridor, and sort of the Bangor to Bucksport corridor, partly because there's more traffic on those roads, I think. And then they're kind of in between levels of particles over in the Blue Hill area, over that way. Doesn't look like particle levels correlate with anything meteorologically, temperature or wind direction or anything like that. They're below levels that you have to worry about. Typical levels around here are about 1/3 of the long-term exposure levels that the EPA suggests are okay for people. So we're probably in good shape. Oh, the other thing we did, our little computer models can estimate how many particles should be in the air, and they come out amazingly close to the number of particles that are actually in the air, which is interesting. since our models are for half the people burning wood, and right now, we don't know how many people are burning wood, right? Gray's whole part of this project is it really only the 10% of the county that's burning wood, which is what the government thinks, or is it more like the 50% who in his surveys say that they're burning wood? But it gives us some confidence that our computer models are in the right ballpark because we get numbers close to what are on these things. We were going to collect particles from houses that heat with different fuels, like wood stoves, pellet stoves, coal stoves, oil stoves, gas stoves, and then try to measure the toxicity of those particles to see if it varies at all. We have these glow-in-the-dark bacteria that you expose the bacteria to whatever you want to find out how bad it is, and if it's bad, the bacteria don't glow in the dark as much. So the idea is if you expose the bacteria to the particles coming from someone's house, if those particles don't hurt the bacteria, they probably won't hurt people. If the bacteria don't like those particles, then they may or may not hurt people, but at least tells you how bad the particles are in some sense. But we never got around to making that work last winter. That might be a next winter project. We haven't really looked at the data from last winter as deeply as we should to see if there are any correlations between anything and anything else. Like the number of little particles versus the number of big particles we haven't really looked at. And I'm not convinced that we've really looked at the particle levels versus wind direction. Part of me thinks that most of our particles here probably come from Bangor, and so when the wind is blowing from Bangor, we probably get more particles. And there are more sophisticated computer models out there, which we might be worth trying to see if we could apply them to this area. We didn't look at the risks and benefits of heating your homes in other ways. Like most people heat with fuel oil now, which doesn't hurt them and doesn't hurt Hancock County, but we're sort of interested in what's it do to the rest of the world, and like the workers in the oil refinery, what are their health risks that we're not bearing the health risks here, but somebody else is. And so to compare the risks of burning wood to the risks of burning other fuels, it seems like we need to look at those other fuels in more detail than we have. I'm sure that there's some limit to how many people could burn wood in any way, even in the cleanest way that's out there. There's going to be some maximum number that the county could deal with without having a problem. And it'd be nice to know what that maximum number is. I think the biggest argument in favor of it is probably the reducing fire danger argument, that right now this county is pretty ripe for forest fires because there's so many small properties that nobody's managed for so long that they're just overgrown. And so I think they should be cleared out to decrease the fire danger, and if you're going to clear them out, you might as well do something useful with all the stuff you're going to clear out, which sounds like burning it for home heat is probably a good idea. And I think that can all be done in a good way, as long as it's done in a good way. The problem is, how do you ensure that it's done responsibly? Because individuals often tend to not do the responsible thing. They tend to do the easy thing or the inexpensive thing. So it would take some policy work, I think, to figure out how to allow people to do this in a way that actually benefits the forests. But it could be done.